taken into account were not identical because there was an update made in the software, etc., etc. And at the moment, the registration procedures are adapted to it. What recommendations were given by the piloters in general? As I said, the introduction or tutorial for the use of the learning portal and the mobile application should be developed. Then the content should be checked according to language for suitability for the different target groups, for example, beginners and professionals. Create learning levels for the different target groups. Maybe that could be an advanced step beyond the time of this project. For example, that if you have different target groups, you have different levels, for example. The definition of the term disability, for example, is in different countries differently addressed. And the pilot has mentioned or recommended maybe to use the standard WHO definition and then adapt it to the most recent definition of national level. Then the supervision by professional experts is obligatory, meaning when using the device or the online portal, it should not be an only learning process only done by one learner. It has to be supervised. Then precise description of competences of the different experts on national level and adaptation of the modules accordingly. That's still a little work to do, but to do it, for example, from our point of view in the German part. In reference to the contents, if you take every module, the red line going through the modules should be adapted at certain points of the learning course. For example, the first 8 module content should be checked according to national laws and contexts, because some maneuvers are allowed, some others are not. Some are appropriate, some are not, etc., etc. It's always, I mean, it is, and that's very important that the portal offers the possibility to enter new terms and new contents, because it is not a fixed content. Especially first aid, sometimes there are new developments, new maneuvers, new findings, which are then integrated in first aid courses, and that should be, of course, be addressed in this as well then later on. Then the creation of an appendix or a glossary, professional definitions for illnesses, for example, disability or disabilities based on the international agreed definitions. And then you saw there was a proof of that. Latin vocabulary should be taken into account and translated maybe into the national languages. And adapted contents of modules to national level, for example, the first aid, working closer together with the medical sector, meaning that the PCG knows, for example, when to do or when to call a doctor. And it is no shame that you cannot solve a problem, but it is necessary to call someone from the medical sector. And complementing this theoretical learning with the opportunity of hands-on work-based learning. That we found very crucial. Of course, we come from a very comfortable vet area in Germany, meaning we have the dual system, I know 2 minutes, we have the dual system, which is also a theoretical and practical approach, always. And of course, being that used to that, in this version we would like to have that as well. Mobile app, the recommendation here, help desk or tour guide should be integrated, and the roles of the learning portal and mobile app should also be maybe clarified. That's it. Let's use this 2 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Let's do the presentation of the different partners. Now, Dr. Blant, Basel University.
Hello to everyone again. I just want to clarify that, first of all, I thank you very much for your extended speech in the training, in the curriculum Erasmus and also the current situation about piloting in Germany. But I want to know that this curriculum or this project is just for the low-skilled people. So that's why we couldn't take into account for the professionals, as I think. But we have to maybe mention about this in our meetings. So I will briefly present the current situation about piloting in our country on the behalf of Gazi University as a coordinator in this project. We had 20 participants composed of 12 women and 8 men. All the participants were low-skilled unemployed people who are seeking to work as a PCG, low-skilled workers who want to be qualified, pre-qualified as PCG. All of them were literate and desirous for the training in MPA project. We have informed the people via email groups that we have in our profession, Facebook, website of our university, formal letter to the nursery homes for elderly, especially in Ankara, and special education and rehabilitation clinics for disabled people, again in Ankara. The profile of the trainers, we are lucky that we are coming from, we are the surgeons at this project, and we are all in the health care sector. Me as Bülent Erdoğan, I'm a PT. Therein was PT. Alper, we have two Alpers. One's a health educator, and the other is the health management lecturer at the health management department of our university. And we were all expertise in the field of rehabilitation in elderly and older people, and experience teaching at the university as well. The duration for the induction sessions was 1st of April and 1st of October 2015. The introduction training in Turkey aimed to introduce the piloting process to the piloters, get the piloters and trainers familiar with the piloting methodology that we have, pre-assessment of the piloters' knowledge with regards to the PCG topic, and the presentation of the online and mobile training platform for the trainers. The evaluation took place between the 1st of September and 13th of November with the finalization of the training process and the post-assessment of the obtained knowledge from the training materials. Collecting feedback and if needed revisions and finalization of the MPF training materials, the duration was between the 1st of November and the 13th of November 2015, and further revisions in response to the testing outcomes was collected and gathered final feedback by members of the National Advisory Board in our country. We will publish online the final version of the training materials in December, between the 1st and the 13th of December. When we look overview of the results in the pre-assessment phase, as you see here, we almost have 50-50 right and wrong answers, which is the average of the 20 participants to this training. And when we look at the post-assessment, they still have some wrong answers, but you see that they improve about the knowledge in the training materials. In Turkey, Gazi purchased 5 mobile Samsung devices, and trainers will provided has 2 Samsung smartphones for their sales for the training. A range of laptops running with Win 7 and Win 8.1 are also being made available for the piloters in their piloting phase. We had some problems in this period and troubleshootings as well, especially terminology, as Andreas mentioned again. The Latin terminology is the main problem. I think that we are planning to prepare a glossary for that, for our national training materials. All the participants has registration problems because they have to have some permission from their job employers. So that's why the main problem was the registration problems, and also they were not aware of the internet connections or other websites, since they are really low skilled people. And even they had no email addresses, which makes hard for their registration as well. They also have lack of knowledge about the Android application, which is used in our training modules. And they have problems with the employers of the PCGs in attending the events, because it's impossible to attend this event except their permission. And also in Turkey, we don't have internet access in everywhere. And also, if you are working as a PCG, it's impossible to use the internet access when you are working in a home or institution. The frequency of required support was we met twice in every month for 5 months with the participants, and we have also personal contacts when they need it about their modules. We will deliver their certification. We are planning to do it in December after this meeting. There are some photos which we brought. They have blended training, which they have trained by the lectures, and also we had the opportunity to present them by practical way in our laboratories in our university, so they were lucky about that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, also, I see that Mrs. Helga Stevens has arrived. I would just like to ask, because I know you have a very tight schedule, if you'd like to give your presentation now, or if you can wait till 12 o'clock to give the presentation. I just would like to know. If you prefer it now, then we do the presentation now.
I can wait 15 minutes.
Then we do the presentation now, and after you will continue with the party. I would like to already to thank you, because I know you have a very busy schedule, so I can set it ready for you now if you want. Where's the microphone? The gentleman, please. Yeah.
Discussion this morning was concentrated on terrorism and the recent terrorist attacks. I had an intervention, so that couldn't really be missed, as you will understand. Thanks very much for Carol for inviting me. I think this is my second intervention. I'm very happy to be here again. Third time here. Okay, well, time flies, and my memory might. I think early dementia might be in the mix. Anyway. So I've been asked to come to talk about social Europe. Social Europe is a very, very difficult discussion because, first of all, we have to ask ourselves whether Europe is social in the first place. What I can tell you about is that member states really do not have a firm stance. So they do have a firm stance on the fact that social policy belongs on the national level. So whether Europe has an added value in terms of social policy is a big question, and we're trying to encourage member states to learn from each other. We also try to facilitate exchanges of information, for example, through this project. The European Union has a lot of funding for projects to help member states learn from each other and create new ways to, for example, care for people. So the added value for the EU is there in the budgetary support, but not necessarily in social and policy support, because the member states don't accept this. If Europe has a proposal from the member states themselves, then again that can be redistributed as good practice. and to encourage other states to kind of copy each other. This is a very tough subject because each member state wants to go their own way, and each member state has very different ways of addressing these things. So it's impossible to copy paste UK to Belgium or Belgium to Turkey. Each member state is very, very different. So because of the way of governance, because of their historical background, and so on. So I wanted to just open up with that kind of initial problem. I will focus on Flanders, right? And so you may be asking, why aren't you focusing on Belgium? Well, Belgium is a very European country in that there are two regional governments in Flanders in the north and Wallonia in the south. And so each federal state has its own policies that relate to disabled people. So if I talk about Flanders, it means that I'm talking about the situation in the north of Belgium and not anything to do with the situation in the south of Belgium. That's very, very different. So please keep that in mind when I'm going through this, that I'm not representing all of Belgium, because our system doesn't really allow me to do this. So the evolution of Wallonia and Flanders has been quite significantly different, and we have different policies as a result of that. So when you look at social security, that is on the state level. So this is Belgian controlled social security, and this mostly has to do with healthcare. It's curative, not preventative healthcare, by the way. So that's it. Only curative healthcare falls under social security of the Belgian state. So the Belgian federal government will reimburse doctors' visits. They'll also reimburse medicines. But what they won't do is, suppose a person, because of their illness or because of an accident, becomes disabled and therefore cannot work. Well, let's say they can. Well, there's two different scenarios. If a person cannot work, then the person will receive an allowance, and that is a kind of income replacement allowance, and that comes from the federal level. On the other hand, if this person, if this person, even though if they're working or they're not working, they need some kind of special assistance because they have a disability, the Flemish government is responsible for providing that. And I know that I'm already getting into the complex nature of how Belgium works, and even us as Belgians are still trying to understand our own system. But when you look at assistance that happens to people with disabilities in Flanders, it's important for you to realize that Flanders has traditionally been focused on service provision via institutions. So most of the time, people with disabilities are required to live in those institutions in order to receive service. So this is a residential home, and what it means that they're not free to live with their own families or live in their own apartments. If you want this service, you have to go and live here. That's been traditionally the Flemish policy. And there have been actually some pretty good models of institutions here, and there have been some pretty bad ones as well. We are working to change the paradigm to be more community-based, to be closer to the people in their own towns and villages, and not having disabled people brought into a separate world of institutionalism just to receive services. So we're looking on integrating disabled people into the communities. The problem is that the institutions are the ones who decide which services and the quality of the services that are provided to disabled individuals. So what's not happening is the institutions are not looking at disabled people and deciding what their needs are based on individual circumstances. Yes, they are roughly looking at, okay, what's the disability, and then they give them a kind of pre-existing package. They say, okay, well, you have this, okay, this is the package we have for you, take it or leave it. And that's traditionally been what disabled people have been faced with in Flanders. Now we're a little bit more, there's a little bit more split, but there is still too much kind of offer-based or package-based services in Flanders, as opposed to individual-based. So I've been a member of the Flemish Parliament, and I've lobbied quite closely the Minister of Welfare and Social Affairs in the Flemish Parliament, stating that this perspective has to change. We should look at disabled people as individuals, and we should try to cater to the individual need instead of saying, okay, well, here's something off the shelf that we built that we think is going to fit, your category of disability. After a long discussion in the Flemish Parliament, we finally got something passed into law in 2013. And this is a law that focuses on it's a strange name, it's personal, it's finances that follow you personally, right? So that's the rough translation from the Dutch. So this means that the Flemish government will give a certain allowance to a person with a disability instead of giving that money to the institution to make the decision, right? So it's not that they stopped giving money to institutions. The institutions are still pretty well funded, but the government now wants the money to go to the individual, and the individual has two choices. Excuse me. Sorry, my phone is disturbing me. So they have two choices. So you have money that's given to you on paper, obviously, and if the individual doesn't want to deal with the paperwork involved, they can say, actually, I trust the institution that's been providing these services thus far. I'm happy to transfer my allowance to the institution and continue in the way that I'm used to, right? So the money on paper says that it goes to the individual, but the individual then has the responsibility to divert the funds to the institution, okay? So the other choice is a more assertive one by the individual saying, actually, I can manage my own budget and I can organize my own services and care and support whatever I need for myself. And that allows a very broad spectrum of the type of services that an individual can receive. So if I need a specialized service from a disability-related service provider, they can go to them directly and say, okay, well, I have a budget for this. Can you provide me with X, Y, and Z services? So suppose they need a personal assistant because they cannot clean themselves. I can go to a service provider that negotiates the fact that negotiates on my behalf and says, okay, well then we're going to have a cleaner come to your home on a regular basis. So this doesn't really have to do with the fact that the person has a disability. They just need someone to come and clean their house. And so you can just go to a normal apartment cleaning service and say, okay, well here's my budget, what can we do, and work it out like that. So it gives the individual more freedom, even for things like physiotherapy. I can choose a private provider, or I can choose a provider that is offered to me in the more traditional way. So it's kind of a my life, my time philosophy, where I'm happy to make my own appointments and I'm happy to deal with the paperwork that goes along with that. So the concept of personalized finance system, right? So it's money that follows the person. Is the government gives you an option. You either have services in kind, which means that services are provided to you in more of the traditional way, and you don't have to worry about any of the paperwork, or you have direct payments, which are self-organized. That does require a paper trail and some more responsibility. You have to justify the money that you're spending with receipts and so on and so forth. The government is not going to give you a blank check. They will, of course, and this is a big discussion in itself. I'm not actually very satisfied with how this discussion has gone so far, but in my vision, in a perfect system, support is always bespoke, right? So it's always going to be tailor-made to the disabled person. But governments like to take the easier way out, to have less paperwork, so they decide to put things on a two-tier system. The first tier is your kind of basic level of service, in that all people who identify as disabled people are automatically enrolled in this tier 1 system, and their needs are then assessed at that level. Okay, so that's going to be the gross majority of disabled people and how they are being assessed. If they need more specific type of assistance, or they need much more support than a basic level provides, then the person is going to be advanced to level 2. Now, I just actually got some feedback or an update on how this system is going and where this discussion has ended. So basically, there's a kind of mid-tier between level 1 and level 2, right? So there are disabilities that need more support, but not as much support as a tier 2. And we haven't gotten a clear reply from the government. The government tends to say, you have this basic support already, you should be happy with it. But we have to understand the background, which is in Flanders, there is a very, very long waiting list. Now, if I remember correctly, last year there were 40,000 people on the waiting list. 40,000 people in Flanders, okay? And those 40,000 people are asking for support on differing levels, of course, but in the group, there are people who already receive some services. But my philosophy is that the government should provide optimal services to people who need it, not provide some services to people who need it and have them be put on a waiting list for the rest of the service, for their needs. Disabled people are citizens in their own right, and they deserve appropriate services and support from the government, not some kind of support, which is what happens now. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. My feeling is basically because the government says you have basic support, stop complaining. There's about 300 euros that's given as a result of this basic support. Some people, that's totally fine, that they're very satisfied. Other people, that's not satisfactory at all. Deaf people, for example, need interpreters. 300 euros will cover about 8 hours of interpreting. That's 300 euros a month. 8 hours of interpreting a month is not enough for a deaf person. So there is a separate system that provides interpreting for people in employment, but there are a lot of other situations where deaf people need interpreters. So it's not satisfactory. Now, if we kind of go up a level to people with serious support needs, they need way more than 300 euros a month. They need a personal assistant working with them 24/7, some of them. So this is where we get caught up in the institutional debates. There are a lot of people who are employed by the institutions, and I respect the institutions and the work that they've done. But my overall question has always been, who comes first? The people who work in institutions or the disabled people themselves? It's a very sensitive issue with the unions, because they're saying, well, no, these are our rights and we have employment rights. And so this has evolved in several different ways, but if we back up and decide that our philosophy should be to encourage disabled people to lead independent lives, meaning that they need to have personal assistance in some courses, then I believe that we can shift things around so that they work well. Some people still need more than a personal assistant. If they have a very serious illness, for example, and then institutions may be the right option. But the point here is that we should give disabled people a choice. The institution should not be choosing for the disabled people. And I agree with you that many people with disabilities don't know what choices they have, they don't know what they need, and that's why the Flemish government set up what we call service support plan. And a service support plan means that there is an institution that knows the services that are available, and a person who is blind, for example, can go to this service support institution and they can say, all right, well, here are your choices. So they're kind of like an agent. And then the person says, well, actually, I would like to have A, B, and C, and the service agent says, okay, here's a plan that we've devised for you to cover your needs based on our discussions, and it goes from there. The person then knows what their needs are in terms of service provision, and when they give this piece of paper to a service provider that then is or is not able to provide that service, they can then put a note. Then with cash, the person can try to get the services that they need as have been described to them. So I think this is kind of an interesting way to move forward. We've also asked the members of parliament, asked the government. We know that there's problems with the budget, and there's a weak support network in terms of this. So we've set up I'm trying to translate this in English, but it's basically another support service, which is more practical, and they help with the negotiations with the service providers and the paperwork. And this is a real revolution. I think it's a very good step forward, but we also must make sure that those new services, so these services that are kind of replacing the services traditionally given by the institutions, are independent from a true service provider point of view. Oftentimes what happens, service providers will try to influence the disabled people to say, actually, no, my service is way better than this other guy. So then it becomes it's a very capitalist way of providing service, and it becomes about money, and then we're back to square one where it's just all business. Yes, a lot of these service providers are non-profit, but at the same time, you could be non-profit and have a capitalist back room, if you will. So the system that I'm explaining to you is very important for because the Flemish Agency for Disability has set up the multidisciplinary team. So, and this is set up, but it's too narrow. I believe that we should widen the scope of this this team to look at the employment situation, look at the housing situation, for example, so that services can be broadened and not only focused on social support and the disability. People aren't living on islands. We have to make sure that if a person can, they should be encouraged to go to work, right? So looking at this from a more holistic point of view, if it's a labor-related issue, let's look at how this ties into the other type of support services that they need. So it's multidisciplinary, not only from the medical point of view or only the social point of view. So it's a challenge, but I think it's something that we're moving toward, fortunately. I will try to explain this system of people, for people with disabilities, where the finance follows the person. So I mentioned this already. The philosophy of the Flemish government hopefully means that this type of service will transfer to our elderly population. Our population is aging, as we all know, and there is another big waiting list in the aging population for nursing homes in Flanders. Some people are still, they still feel too proud to go to a nursing home, and they should be offered the choice of being able to stay home. But staying home means you need support at home, right? Look at Denmark. They have a beautiful, beautiful system. I think Switzerland also can provide us with some good example of home-based service for the elderly. That's all I have for this morning. If you have any questions, please, or if I forgot anything, please let me know. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, Helga, I would like to thank you because every time we invite you for a speech, you succeed in highlighting the current status of affairs, but at the same time you also point out at the missing gaps, the things that are still still should be improved, in fact. So thank you very much for that. I would like to shortly come back to the system like they are working on now in Flanders to improve things actually, because we come from very far away. In fact, when I present abroad what we are doing in Flanders, people are surprised. Whether we look at employment, for example, the VLEVA, how people with disabilities more and more are pushed into the regular labor market, but also when we look, for example, at personal assistance budgets, etc. People are surprised with what we are doing here, and often they look at it as a best practice, a good practice way of working. So I hope that sooner or later we'll also be able to invite you abroad and also pinpoint to the people there what could be done. Because I believe in Flanders we are on the right way, we are heading to the right direction. Still a lot of work to be done, but in many other countries it's very limited. Maybe for your information, there are people here from Colombia as well. I have the privilege every year to go and teach in Colombia. Also teaching what we are doing in Flanders, what we are doing in Europe. So you see, your presentation here is maybe done in Brussels, but I'm sure many people abroad will also benefit from what you have been saying. So thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience?
Yes.
Adrian?
Sorry, I have just a comment related to what you just said. Thank you very much. One important example to show the difference between Flanders and Wallonia. You just mentioned VDAB. VDAB focuses on employment, and it's any type of employment, not only disabled people in employment. Disabled people are one group who are covered under VDAB, so this is a general unemployment initiative as well. I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe even
more or less.
More, yeah. Yeah, it was around 2005. The responsibility for people with disabilities it wasn't in unemployment. It was in the Flemish Agency for People with Disabilities. But they had no knowledge about employment issues, about retraining. So, back in 2005, the government decided that disability should be mainstreamed and all competencies in all competent fields. So, disability in transport, disability in education, disability in employment, and so on and so forth. So, it made the Minister of Social Affairs not responsible for every single thing to do with disabled people in their lives. We were able to convince them that the system wasn't working. And now that we've progressed over 10 years, there are still, yes, many gaps and many problems. People with disabilities are now overrepresented in unemployment statistics, and that's bad. We're still working on that. But compared to Wallonia, who doesn't have the new system, they follow the old way. One agency is responsible for all people with disabilities. Almost all disabled people are out of work in Wallonia. So, all agencies and all government departments need to be responsible for disabled people. That is integration.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Yes, Adrian, you have a question?
Hello, my name is Andrian Lazarov. I'm coming from Bulgaria. I have followed your speech very thoroughly, and you spoke about different things in terms of access, accessibility, etc. What real measures you do in terms to cope with behavioral attitudes of the society? What effective measures you did in terms of the behavioral barriers in terms of the society, in concretely as a politician?
Thank you. That is a very relevant and important question. Societal attitudes are a big barrier. Many people think that people with disabilities can't do anything, that they're a burden to society. We need to change this concept, and the best way to do this is via education. In education, many countries fail to disable their disabled citizens. We need to make sure that education is important for all citizens. This is said on a policy level, but disabled children often get left out of this. So it's really all except disabled people. Or that they're put into special education. People with disabilities aren't stupid. They can do a lot more than society gives them credit for. So society needs to expect more from our disabled youth. The fact that we have low expectations for children with disabilities means that we will therefore have a low expectation of disabled adults in society. In Flanders, we have been working on inclusive education. It's still a hot debate, but in principle, from the 1st of September of this year, all or most children with disabilities have the right to go to a mainstream school, which would be their regular public school near home, right? So they shouldn't have to be forced to go to a boarding school, which is far from their parents. Now, this is in practice now, but many, many schools are coming up with every excuse in the book. We don't have physical access to the building, we don't have any experience to deal with them, our class sizes are too large, and so on and so forth. Really, there are many excuses that have nothing to do with the rights of disabled children to have education and to live at home with their own families. I know that the government has been cutting budgets, but in education, they haven't really cut that much because the teachers have been so focused on the average child. So many children, not only disabled children, there are students who learn in different ways, in non-traditional ways, they fall through the gaps. The Parliament and the Flemish government have been trying to address these teachers to say, yes, you're doing a great job and you're focusing on most of the students, but we need you to open your minds a little bit to consider all of the needs of the children in your classroom. A lot of schools are trying to cope with children of non-Dutch speaking backgrounds, right? So there are linguistic elements in the school system which have to do with migration and other factors. So putting disability on top of this already complex environment is seen to be kind of overflow. So if a child, a lot of teachers will say, what we need to convince the school systems and the teachers is if a disabled child comes into your classroom, everyone else benefits. The reason is because you're going to become a better teacher, first of all, and that's going to benefit the class, not only that one disabled child. People are afraid of new situations. This is normal. I call this the kind of cold water fear, right? So like, you know it's cold, you don't want to jump in, but we have to understand that and work on it. But that's where we start. We start with the kids in school, we start with parents, and we have to teach them that this is going to have a positive impact on your children's lives and a positive impact on education. We still have a long way to go, and I agree with you that this is not an easy solution. What we have to do is persist.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for Mrs. Stevens? No?
Just one contribution. Sorry, thank you very much, first of all. I have a son, so he goes to a primary school, so he's second year, and he's cerebral palsy. And it is really, very good chance for classroom to share all the knowledge, and also living together with families and in kids together, not only in classroom but also whole school as well. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, if that is it, I know you have a very busy agenda, but I have a small present for you, and I would like to take a nice picture with you in front of our banners as well. Okay, and then for the other people, there will be a break, of course, about 15 minutes, and then we continue with the rest of the presentation. So, if maybe you could take, if everyone could come here and we take a picture all together. If everyone could come on the stage and we take a picture all together.
So, if people for a picture, please come here. Then we take a picture, and then we have the break. Okay? Bravo. Thank
Fresh. Nice meeting you. We'll see each other again.
Give me this one.